Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, everyone. Today I have got a real interesting story for you. The story of a girl who eventually accepted Islam. Now, she was not exactly an atheist, but she also did not really believe in any specific religion either. You could basically call her agnostic. And just to quickly explain the difference, an atheist straight up denies the existence of God. They don't believe in God at all. But an agnostic is a little different. Agnostics usually believe that there might be some kind of higher power out there, some greater force in the universe, but they just don't follow any particular religion. So, today, let's hear the girl's story in her own words about how she eventually found her way to Islam.
Hi, everyone. I want to tell you the story of my life that eventually led me to Islam. Honestly, the whole thing kind of started when I was about 16. Back then, I had this really close friend, like the kind you tell everything to. One day, I opened up to her about something that had been sitting heavy in my heart for a long time. I told her that for years, I just hadn't felt any real spiritual connection with my religion. My parents were Christians, but if I'm being real, I never felt like I truly fit into Christianity. Going to church never felt right to me. It didn't feel natural or uplifting. It felt more like a responsibility, like something I had to do, rather than something my heart actually wanted. It was like checking off a chore, you know? But even with all that, there was one thing I was totally sure about. I didn't want to cut God out of my life. I didn't want to become agnostic, and I definitely didn't want to be an atheist. A lot of kids around me at that age were calling themselves atheists. You know how it is when you're a teenager and everyone's trying to figure out their identity. But deep inside, I always felt this connection to God. I always had this sense that there was someone out there I could talk to, someone who could hear my questions, listen to my worries, and maybe help calm the fear and uncertainty I felt about life. I think a big reason I felt that way was because my childhood was honestly pretty rough. By the time I was a teenager, I really needed something to hold on to. I wanted there to be a God, some higher power who could help me. Inside me, there was always this feeling, like an intuition, an inner voice, that life couldn't just be this, like there had to be something deeper behind everything we see. Part of why my childhood was so difficult was because my parents' relationship wasn't strong at all. Actually, the truth is, they were never even officially married. They were basically in a live-in relationship, and eventually they split up. My mom wasn't a very strong personality, and even today, my relationship with her isn't great. We don't really talk much. So, most of the time, my dad was the one raising me. He was basically a single parent, trying to handle everything on his own. And he had a lot going on. He was taking care of me while also dealing with legal and family issues involving my mom. So all of that chaos definitely affected my life. From about the age of 14, I was constantly moving between different houses. One place, then another place. I think I changed homes 8 or 9 times. And every time that happened, I also had to switch schools. Our family problems even went to court at one point. So the environment I grew up in wasn't exactly stable or comfortable for a kid. Growing up, I rarely had what you'd call a complete family. Because of that, I often felt really drawn to my friends' moms. I guess I just wanted that kind of motherly presence around me. Luckily, a lot of my friends' families were super warm and kind to me. My aunt and my grandparents were also a big support in my life, so I wasn't completely alone. Then Islam entered my life, and honestly, it changed everything. It didn't just open new doors for me, it introduced me to new people, new conversations, and totally new life experiences. I've always loved learning about different cultures. I'm the kind of person who's fascinated by how different people live, their family structures, traditions, food, daily habits, all of it. And because of Islam, I ended up meeting the best friend I've ever had in my life. Her name is Erit. We actually met through social media. I saw one of her posts on an Instagram account and decided to follow her. Slowly, we started chatting. One day, I told her that I was Muslim too. She was like, "Wait, seriously?" I told her, yeah, I had studied Islam, and honestly, the beliefs and ideas I already had about life lined up almost perfectly with what Islam teaches. So in my mind, I felt like I was already Muslim. Then she told me, "You should come to my house and meet my little sister." So I did. I went over to her place and met my little sister too. They told me that if I really wanted to become Muslim, I had to say the Shahada, the testimony of faith. And right there in my friend's house, I recited the Shahada and officially accepted Islam. After that day, we became incredibly close friends. But if I'm being honest, the real beginning of my journey towards Islam actually started earlier, when I first realized I didn't feel spiritually connected to Christianity anymore. Even then, I kept praying to God. I would talk to him the way you talk to a close friend, just pouring my heart out. I would ask things like, what am I supposed to do? What's the truth? Which path should I take in life? I didn't feel connected to Christianity, but I also didn't want to remove God from my life. Around that time, I also looked a little into Judaism. I started researching it, but I didn't go very deep into it. One reason was because I was already talking a lot with that same friend who introduced me to Islam. But even after accepting Islam, my journey didn't just stop there. Later, when that relationship eventually ended, I started researching Islam on my own. For about 6 or 7 months, I kept reading and learning. I think I started around December, and by the end of the next summer, I had reached the conclusion that this really was the path I wanted to follow. When I was trying to understand Islam at such a young age, like 16, the Muslim community treated me incredibly well. People were so kind and helpful. Everyone wanted to teach me something. Honestly, I don't remember meeting a single Muslim who refused to help me. People answered my questions, even the tough ones. Even doubts, critical questions, or things I simply didn't understand, people took the time to explain. Even some people who weren't particularly close to me still wanted to help because they cared about my journey and wanted me to understand Islam properly. One thing that really impressed me was that in Islam, people don't run away from difficult questions. Throughout history, criticisms of Islam from atheists, from Christian and Jewish scholars have been recorded and preserved by Muslim scholars themselves so that they could respond to them. That intellectual honesty really stood out to me. I've always been deeply interested in science, so I naturally care about facts and evidence. To me, science and religion shouldn't be enemies. Everything we discover through science is ultimately a part of God's creation. In my view, evolution could also be part of the system God set in motion. The Big Bang could also have happened according to the laws that God set in motion.
Before we continue with the story, guys, a quick request. If this story is touching your heart and you enjoy listening to inspiring stories like this, then please go ahead and subscribe to the channel so more uplifting stories can reach you. And don't forget to like the video and drop a comment below telling us which city you are watching from. Jazakumullah khair.
After about 6 months of doing my own personal research, I finally accepted Islam. But socially and mentally, it wasn't easy at all. Honestly, it's been really hard, and in many ways it still is. One big reason for that is my family. They're pretty conservative. It's not like they hate other religions or anything, but their mindset is very limited and very centered around Christianity. I've tried several times to talk to them openly about it, to tell them that I accepted Islam. I even tried starting the conversation a few times, but to this day, I still haven't been able to tell them. Most of my friends are Muslims now, though I also have friends from other religions. But even with all that, I've had to hide my Islam. And honestly, I'm still hiding it today. I don't think I'll be able to talk about it openly until I'm completely independent, or maybe until I get married. If my family found out right now, there's a chance they might cut ties with me. At least, that's what it feels like to me. I really hope that wouldn't happen, and maybe it actually wouldn't, but I know they'd have a lot of questions. The biggest one would probably be why I kept something like this from them for so long. There have been a few moments when they almost figured it out, though. My grandmother has gotten suspicious before, and my dad has noticed things too. For example, one time I hadn't figured out how to silence the adhan notification on my phone, and suddenly the adhan started playing out loud. That was awkward. Then there was the time I suddenly stopped eating pork. In my family, pork is super common. My grandparents aren't Italian, but they grew up in a part of Brooklyn where there was a huge Italian community. So in our house, pork, sausages, and stuff like that were always normal foods. One day I suddenly said I didn't want to eat it anymore because it made me feel nauseous. Once, my grandmother even found a Quran in my room and threw it out the window. Sometimes she would even say there was no pork in the food when there actually was. I think she was trying to test me. When that happened, I would put the food in my mouth and then later go to the bathroom and spit it out. I also have a Muslim calendar app on my phone. My dad has asked me about it several times, like, what is this thing on your phone? Why do you have this? And I'd just make up some excuse saying a friend set it up on my phone once and I didn't know how to turn it off. Even now he sometimes asks about it. I remember about 6 months ago he asked again, why haven't you removed that yet? And I just said I never got around to turning it off. I don't want to make my family look like bad people, and I'm not trying to say they're wrong. A lot of it is honestly just a generational difference. They grew up in a very Catholic environment, and the image they have of Islam is the typical old stereotype. I think my dad might actually be a little more open-minded, but my grandmother is the head of the family, and she has a lot of influence. I don't want to criticize her beliefs either. She grew up in a time when people didn't really get the chance to learn about different religions and cultures the way we do today. Now we have the internet, and information is everywhere. That's a huge blessing for people like us. Back then, I used to tell my dad I was going to the shopping mall, but in reality, my friend would take me to the mosque. Sometimes we would just sit somewhere and talk about Islam for hours. She was a huge help for me. Sometimes she even drove me to the mosque because at that time I didn't have a car. Another thing that was really difficult after accepting Islam was learning how to pray. I couldn't openly pray at home. After high school, I started studying at a community college, and during that time, I had to live with my grandparents. That meant I had to hide even more things. During Ramadan, usually I couldn't fast either, except when I was staying at my own apartment. Islam has become a huge part of my life, like a really huge part. Because of Islam, about 90% of the friends I have today are people I met after becoming Muslim. My friends played a massive role in my journey. The people I met in high school, like my friends Arish, Yasmin, Sarah, and others, helped me so much without expecting anything in return. They answered countless questions for me. They sent me videos, shared resources where I could learn online, and explained so many things to me. There was also another girl named Yera. One time, I went with her to a community college event where she gave me brochures about Islam and explained a lot about Ramadan. If I had to give advice to people who have accepted Islam but are still living in environments where most people around them aren't Muslim, I'd say this. Today, there are tons of resources to learn Islam. You can check Reddit forums, use Instagram, or even TikTok. There are many people there who are converts themselves, and they've built their own little communities online. You can also visit your local mosque. I actually met a woman at the mosque who helped me a lot. Or you can ask Muslims around you for help, neighbors, coworkers, classmates, anyone. I remember something funny from the first time I ever went to a mosque. It was nighttime, and there weren't many people there. I met a woman, and I told her straight up, I don't know how to make wudu. Actually, I don't really know anything about this place. Can you teach me? She immediately said, yeah, of course. She took me to the wudu area. I rolled up my sleeves, took off my scarf, and she patiently showed me step by step how to perform wudu. After that, she even gave me her email address and told me, if you ever have questions, feel free to contact me. I truly believe that when someone sincerely wants to come closer to Allah, Allah sends the right people into their life to help them. And nowadays, the internet also gives you so many opportunities to research and connect with people. So even if someone feels lonely or feels like they can't talk to the people around them, the truth is they're not actually alone on this journey. Somewhere out there, there's always someone willing to help. You just have to be the kind of person who keeps searching, because when you do, somehow the path always starts to open up.
Dear viewers, her journey to Islam was not loud or dramatic, but deeply personal and full of quiet struggles. As a teenager searching for truth, she found answers in Islam that connected spirituality, reason, and science in a way that made sense to her heart. Yet, accepting Islam also meant carrying a heavy secret because she still has not been able to tell her family about her faith. Despite the challenges, she continues her journey with patience and hope, believing that when someone sincerely seeks the truth, Allah always opens a path and sends the right people to help along the way.